The rain came down like it had something to prove. Steele Morrison was doing 80 on Route 9 when he saw the headlights. Wrong angle, wrong side of the guardrail, glass already scattered across the asphalt like broken teeth. He should have kept riding. That was what men like him did. They kept moving. They didn't stop for the world because the world had never stopped for them. But then he heard it. Small, thin, almost swallowed whole by the storm. A child crying. He hit the brakes so hard the rear wheel fishtailed across the wet blacktop, and for 1 second, one long, terrible second, he was back 15 years standing in a hospital hallway, hearing a sound exactly like that, and knowing there was nothing left he could do. Steele Morrison hadn't cried in over a decade. He wasn't about to start now. But his hands were shaking when he killed the engine. Hey, if this story already has you leaning forward, you're exactly where I want you. Stay with me all the way to the end because this one doesn't go where you think it's going. Hit that like button, drop a comment below. Tell me what city you're watching from tonight. Let's see how far this family reaches. The wreck was fresh enough that the radiator was still hissing. A late model sedan, navy blue or maybe black, hard to tell with the rain punishing everything, had gone through the guardrail on the curve where Route 9 bent hard south toward Mill Haven. The front end was folded around a concrete divider post like crumpled paper. One headlight still burned, casting a lopsided beam into the tree line. The other was dark and crushed inward. Steele dismounted without thinking. His boots hit the wet asphalt, and he was moving, the rain hammering the back of his leather cut, his beard already soaked through, water running in cold rivulets down the back of his neck. He'd left his helmet on the bike. He didn't remember making that choice. The crying was coming from outside the car. She was standing in the ditch beside the passenger door, maybe 3 feet from the road, wearing a yellow raincoat that was 2 sizes too big for her. 6 years old, maybe. Small enough that the runoff water in the ditch was already at her ankles. She wasn't running. She wasn't screaming. She was just standing there, holding something flat against her chest with both arms, and crying the way children cry when they've been crying long enough that the sound has gone quiet and hollow. And the tears are just running on their own because nobody has come yet, and nobody is coming, and the body hasn't accepted that reality. Steele stopped 3 feet from her. He didn't know why he stopped. He was a large man, 6'2", 240, with arms that had been breaking things since his 20s and a face that had absorbed enough damage to tell its own story without words. He knew what he looked like to normal people. He knew what a man like him looked like stepping out of the dark toward a child in a ditch on a deserted highway at night. So he stopped. He crouched down in the rain until he was closer to her level. He didn't reach for her. "Hey," he said. His voice came out rougher than he intended. It always did. The girl looked at him. She didn't run. That was the first thing that surprised him. Her eyes were dark brown and enormous and so full of something, not fear exactly, more like a weight that had no right being in a child's face. She looked at him the way people look at something they've already decided they don't have the energy to be afraid of. "My mom's in the car," she said. Steele moved. The driver's side door was jammed. He got his fingers in the gap and pulled until the hinge gave a sound like a gunshot, and the door swung open on broken protest. The woman inside was early 30s, dark hair matted to her face, unconscious but breathing. He checked that first, 2 fingers to the side of her throat, pulse thin but present. The airbag had deployed and deflated. Her head had hit the window anyway. There was blood at her hairline, a slow crawl of it already drying at the corner of her eye. He straightened up, pulled out his phone. 1 bar, barely. He got through to 911 on the 3rd attempt. Gave the location, gave what he knew, kept it short because short was all the signal would hold. The dispatcher asked him to stay on the line. He pocketed the phone. The girl had followed him. She was standing just behind his left shoulder now, still holding whatever it was against her chest, still crying that quiet, automated cry. "She's breathing," Steele said. He didn't soften it. He said it the way it was. "Help's coming." The girl nodded, one small, serious nod like she was filing the information away. "What's your name?" he asked. Emma. Okay, Emma. I'm Steele. I'm going to stand right here until the ambulance comes. You understand? She looked at him for a long moment. The rain was coming down hard enough that he could barely hear himself think. Then she said, You have a lot of tattoos. Yeah. My mom says tattoos are just stories people couldn't say out loud. Steele didn't have an answer for that. He stood up straight and turned his face into the rain and didn't say anything at all because the woman unconscious in that car had just said something true, and she didn't even know he was there to hear it. The thing Emma was holding against her chest was a photograph. He caught a glimpse of it when her grip shifted. A family picture, looked like, printed on regular paper, edges soft from handling. There was a dark stain on one corner that he told himself was from the rain and knew wasn't. He didn't ask about it. Not yet. The ambulance took 11 minutes. It felt longer. Steele stood in the rain beside the wreck, and the girl stood near him, not touching him, not talking, just existing in that particular way that very young children and very old dogs exist near someone they've decided not to be afraid of. Close enough to feel the warmth, but not asking for anything more than that. Steele kept his eyes on the road and his hands loose at his sides and thought about nothing, which was the only trick he'd ever mastered. The EMTs were professional and quick. They got a collar on the woman, got a board under her, got her loaded. One of them, young guy, red-haired, came over to Steele with that particular expression civilians get when they're looking at a 6'2" biker standing over an injured woman and a small child on a dark highway. The expression that's not quite accusatory but is absolutely taking notes. You the one who called it in? Yeah. You know them? No? The EMT looked at Emma. Sweetie, is this man? He stayed with me, Emma said. He stayed. The EMT nodded slowly, looked back at Steele with something recalibrating behind his eyes. We're going to need to take her mother. Social services will... I know the protocol, Steele said. He didn't know the protocol, but he knew that what came next for this girl involved a system that had no idea what to do with broken things, and that knowledge sat in his chest like something calcified. They took the mother. Emma watched the ambulance doors close with the same expression she'd had the whole time, that heavy, ancient look that had no right being on a 6-year-old face. She didn't cry harder. She didn't fall apart. She just watched and held her photograph and stood in the rain. A county cruiser had arrived by then. Deputy named Rourke, 40s, thick through the middle. The kind of face that had made 100 snap judgments and never doubted a single one. He took one look at Steele, and his hand moved to the radio on his shoulder like a reflex. You involved in this accident? No, I came up on it, called it in. Rourke's eyes went to the Harley on the shoulder, to the cut Steele was wearing. Iron Remnants MC, the rocker arced across the back in worn gold thread, to the tattoos on Steele's hands and neck, to the scar that ran from Steele's left ear to the corner of his jaw. Iron Remnants, Rourke said. Not a question, more like a categorization, a filing. We're a writing club, Steele said. I know what you are. Steele looked at him. Then you know I called 911 and stood in the rain for 11 minutes to make sure this kid wasn't alone. That's all I know about tonight. Rourke stared at him another 3 seconds. The full law enforcement 3 seconds, calibrated to make men nervous, and then shifted his attention to Emma. His voice changed when he spoke to her. Went softer. Practiced, but not fake. Hey, sweetheart. I'm Deputy Rourke. You doing okay? Emma looked at him. Then she looked at Steele. Then she reached out and took Steele's hand. She just grabbed it. Right hand, cold and small and wet, 4 fingers wrapped around 2 of his, and she held on. Steele stood very still. Rourke saw it. The recalibration happened again in his face, slower this time. You have any family we can call? Rourke asked Emma. Aunt, uncle, grandparent? My Aunt Sarah, Emma said. Her voice had gone flat when she said the name. Flat in a way that had nothing to do with shock. Okay, we'll try to reach her, but tonight, I want to stay with him, Emma said. She squeezed Steele's hand. He stayed. Rourke looked at Steele. Steele looked back at him and thought, don't do this, this is not your life anymore. You don't have anything to give a child? You are a hollow man living in a trailer on the edge of Mill Haven, and you have not been a father in 15 years, and you failed at it when you had the chance. He looked down at Emma. She was looking up at him with those dark, heavy eyes, her yellow raincoat soaked through, her photograph still held against her chest with her free hand. "Don't cry," she said. "Look at me." The words hit him like a physical thing, like a fist under the ribs, because that was what his daughter used to say to him. Those exact words, in that exact order, every time she was scared and trying to be brave. "Don't cry. Look at me." She'd been 4 years old when she started saying it, and she'd said it to him in the hospital the last night he'd seen her, and he had looked away, and he had never stopped looking away after that. He hadn't cried in 11 years. He wasn't crying now, but his hand closed around Emma's, and he said to Rourke, "What do I need to sign?" It took an hour. There was paperwork, there were phone calls. There was a woman from County Social Services who arrived in a beige sedan and looked at Steele like he was a problem she hadn't budgeted for. Her name was Delgado, late 50s, reading glasses on a chain, and she had the particular manner of someone who had seen the system fail children so many times that she'd started pre-failing them herself just to manage expectations. "Mr. Morrison." She looked at her clipboard. "You have a prior. Aggravated assault, 2009. Charges dropped. Disorderly conduct, 2011. $50 fine. You're affiliated with Iron Remnants Motorcycle Club, which has been named in—" "Riding Club," Steele said. "And I know what we've been named in. We've also been cleared in." He kept his voice flat. "She knows me. I'm all she's got tonight. What do I need to sign?" Delgado looked at Emma, who was sitting in the back of the cruiser with a foil emergency blanket around her shoulders, and Steele's hand still loosely in hers through the open door. Then she looked back at Steele. "This is a 48-hour emergency placement," Delgado said, her voice dropping half a register. "That's all I can authorize. After that, we assess. You understand me?" "Yeah." "Mr. Morrison?" She waited until he looked at her directly. "If I find out that child isn't safe—" "She'll be safe," Steele said. He didn't say it to reassure her. He said it because it was simply the truth of what he had decided. And Steele Morrison had always been a man who said true things in a flat voice, and he was not going to perform gentleness for a woman with a clipboard just because she needed to see it. Delgado studied him for another long moment, then she handed him the clipboard. He drove to Mill Haven General first. Emma didn't ask to go. She didn't ask for anything, but she came with him through the sliding ER doors and stood beside him at the nurse's station while he asked about the woman from the accident. The nurse looked at him, looked at Emma, then she said the woman, Rachel Cole, according to her ID, was in surgery. No further information available to non-family. Emma took the news the same way she'd taken everything else. That flat, adult stillness. In the waiting room, under the buzzing fluorescent lights that made everyone look sick, Emma finally opened her hand and showed him the photograph. It was a picture of the two of them, Emma and her mother, standing somewhere warm, somewhere with trees and sunlight, both of them laughing at something outside the frame. Emma was maybe 4 in the picture. Her mother was young and unguarded in a way that hospital hallways didn't allow. The bloodstain was on the corner where Emma's mother's face was. Emma had her thumb over it, careful, like she was protecting it. "She always keeps this in her jacket pocket," Emma said. "I took it before they took her away. Is that okay?" "Yeah," Steele said. "That's okay." "She's going to be okay, right?" Emma asked, and for the first time all night, the adult stillness cracked, just at the edges, just enough to show the 6-year-old underneath it. "Right?" Steele looked at the photograph. He looked at the girl. He thought about the right thing to say, the kind thing, the thing a person with practice at this would know how to offer. "I don't know," he said, "but I'm not going anywhere." Emma nodded, pulled her knees up to her chest in the plastic waiting room chair, and leaned her head against his arm and closed her eyes. Steele sat very still. He kept his eyes on the opposite wall. The clock above the nurse's station read 1:17 a.m. The fluorescent light buzzed. Somewhere down the corridor, someone was coughing. Somewhere outside, the rain was still coming down. He hadn't been this close to a sleeping child in 15 years. He didn't move for 2 hours. At 3:40 a.m., a doctor came out of the surgery wing. Young, exhausted, with the particular careful expression that doctors construct when the news is not good and they've had to deliver it enough times that they've built a face for it. He asked for family. Steele said he was the emergency contact for the night. The doctor looked at his cut, his tattoos, the scar on his jaw. Then he looked at Emma, asleep against Steele's arm. He said that Rachel Cole had sustained severe head trauma and internal bleeding, that they had done what they could, that she had not survived surgery. Steele listened. He said, "Thank you." He didn't wake Emma. He sat in that plastic chair in that buzzing fluorescent light and held the weight of what was coming, what Emma would wake up to, what she would carry from this night forward, the thing that was going to break over her like a wave she didn't know was coming. And he sat with it alone in the dark, the way he'd sat with every hard thing in his life. Quietly, without flinching, without anyone watching, except he wasn't alone. Emma stirred, opened her eyes, looked up at him with those dark, heavy eyes, still half in sleep. She read his face. She was 6 years old, and she read his face in 3 seconds, and she knew, and the knowing came over her not like a wave, but like something settling, like weight being added to weight that was already more than a child should carry. She didn't ask. She just pulled the photograph tighter against her chest and turned her face into the leather of his jacket and held very still. Steele put his arm around her. Careful. Like something breakable, like something he might break just by being himself. Outside, the rain had not stopped. By 5 a.m., they were back in Steele's truck. He'd loaded the Harley in the bed, an act that would have seemed impossible an hour ago and now just seemed like logistics. Emma was buckled into the passenger seat, the foil blanket still around her shoulders, the photograph in her lap. She was awake, but not talking. Steele drove toward Millhaven's east side, toward the trailer on Culvert Road, and he kept both hands on the wheel and his eyes on the wet pavement ahead. He had 48 hours before Delgado came back. He had no crib, no children's food, no television programming that wasn't football or the History Channel, no idea what a 6-year-old needed beyond the obvious, and the obvious had never been something he was good at. His phone buzzed in his jacket pocket. He ignored it. It buzzed again. Then again. At the next red light, he pulled it out. 3 messages, same number. Crow, his road sergeant, his oldest friend, the man who'd pulled him out of more bad situations than either of them had ever admitted to. The messages read, "In order. Heard something went down on Route 9. You okay, brother? Steele, answer the damn phone." He typed back, "I'm okay. Got a situation. Talk tomorrow." 3 seconds passed. Crow, "What kind of situation?" Steele looked at Emma. She was looking out the passenger window at the wet, dark streets of Millhaven, her breath making small clouds on the glass. He typed, "The kind I can't explain tonight." He pocketed the phone. The light turned green. He didn't know what he was driving toward. He knew what he was driving away from, or what he had decided, somewhere in that fluorescent-lit waiting room, not to drive away from anymore. The difference felt important, even if he couldn't articulate it, even if it sat in his chest alongside everything else he'd never been able to say out loud. Emma turned from the window. "Do you have a daughter?" she asked. The question was so direct and so quiet that it took a moment to register. Steele kept his eyes on the road. "I did," he said. "What happened?" "I made some bad choices," he said, "and then I kept making them. And then there wasn't anything left to fix." Emma considered this the way she considered everything. Seriously, without judgment, like she was weighing it against something she already knew. "My mom says people who make bad choices are just people who were scared," she said. "She says scared doesn't mean bad." Steele's hands tightened on the wheel. He didn't respond. He drove. He pulled the truck through the wet streets of Millhaven, and he didn't say anything, because the woman who had said that, the woman who had known how to say that to a 6-year-old on an ordinary day in an ordinary voice, so that the child carried it with her like armor, that woman was gone now. And this child had no one left who knew how to talk to her the way she needed, except, apparently, him, which was a thought so absurd he almost said it out loud. The trailer on Culvert Road was dark and cold when he unlocked the door. The porch light had been burned out for 2 months, and he hadn't replaced it. Inside, it smelled like old coffee and motor oil and the specific loneliness of a space that a man inhabits the way furniture inhabits a room. Present, functional, not really living. He found an old sleeping bag in the closet. Clean, at least. He made up the couch, found a pillow, found a blanket. Emma watched him do it without comment. "You can sleep here," he said. "I'll be down the hall." Emma sat on the edge of the couch. She held the photograph in both hands and looked at it for a long time. "She kept saying we were going to be okay," Emma said. Quiet. Not to Steele exactly, to the photograph. On the drive, before the rain got bad, she kept saying it. Steele stood in the doorway and didn't say anything. There was nothing to say. Some truths didn't need commentary. They just needed to be stood near. "She was scared," Emma said. "That's all." She looked up at him. "Right? That's all it was." Steele looked at the girl sitting on his couch in his dark trailer with her dead mother's photograph and her foil blanket and her yellow raincoat and her ancient 6-year-old eyes, and he said, "Yeah, that's all it was. She was scared and she loved you, and those two things were the whole of it." Emma nodded, laid down, pulled the sleeping bag up to her chin. Steele turned off the light. He was halfway down the hall when she said, in a small, clear voice, "Steele." He stopped. "Thank you for staying." He stood in the dark hallway of his trailer and pressed his palm flat against the wall and breathed. "Get some sleep," he said. He didn't sleep. He sat at his kitchen table in the dark with a cold cup of coffee and stared at his hands. The knuckles, the ink, the scars, the evidence of every decision he'd made and unmade over 49 years. And he thought about the aunt, Sarah, the way Emma's voice had gone flat when she said the name. Flat the way voices go, not when a name means nothing, but when a name means something specific and learned and not good. The flatness of a child who has been taught, without being taught, that certain sounds mean certain things, and certain people are not safe the way safe is supposed to mean. Steele had heard that flatness before. He'd heard it in his own voice once, when he was young enough that he didn't have language for what it meant. He had language for it now. He pulled his phone out, opened his messages, typed to Crow. "Need you to run a name tomorrow. Sarah Cole. Whatever you can find." He set the phone down. He sat in the dark and listened to the rain thin out against the trailer roof and thought about a woman who had driven through a storm with her daughter while she was scared, saying we're going to be okay, and whether that woman had been running from something, and whether the something had a name, and whether the name was Sarah. And then his phone lit up with a message from a number he hadn't seen in 3 years. His daughter's number. "Dad, I heard you were in an accident on Route 9. Are you okay?" Steele stared at the screen for a long time. The message was 5 words beyond what he deserved, and he knew it. He didn't answer. Not yet. He set the phone face down on the table and sat in the dark and felt the specific weight of all the things that were converging on this single night. The girl asleep on his couch, the dead woman in the hospital, the aunt with the flat name, the daughter who hadn't called him dad in 3 years. And he understood, in the bone-deep way that a man understands things when he's been running long enough that he's tired, that he had stopped running. He didn't know yet what that meant. He didn't know yet what was coming. But in the morning, he would. Because Emma would wake up, and Delgado would call, and Crow would start pulling on the thread of Sarah Cole's name, and whatever that thread was attached to would begin to come loose. And Steele Morrison, who had spent 15 years being a man with nothing left to lose, was about to find out what it felt like to have something worth protecting again. The only question was whether he was going to be enough. Given his history, he already knew the answer the world would give. What he didn't know yet was whether he was willing to prove the world wrong. The morning came in gray and cold, the way mornings do in Millhaven in late November. Not dramatic, not cinematic, just a slow leaking of light through windows that hadn't been cleaned in 2 years, making everything inside look underwater. Steele had not slept. He knew this the way you know things when you're 49 and your body has stopped pretending. Not tired exactly, more like emptied out, like something had been running all night and burned through whatever was left in the tank. He was still at the kitchen table when the light changed. The coffee in his cup had gone cold 4 hours ago. His phone was face down where he'd left it. He hadn't turned it over. He heard Emma wake up before he heard her move. There was a particular quality of silence that changed when a child stopped sleeping. Something in the air shifted, some barometric thing he couldn't name, and then a few seconds later he heard the rustle of the sleeping bag and the soft thud of small feet on linoleum. She appeared in the kitchen doorway in her yellow raincoat. Still wearing it, he realized she'd slept in it, with her hair pushed sideways from the pillow and her eyes doing that thing they did, that ancient reading thing, scanning the room and then landing on him. She didn't say good morning. She didn't ask where she was. She said, "Did you sleep?" "No," Steele said. She nodded, like that was the correct answer, and came and sat in the chair across from him. She set the photograph on the table between them, face up. She looked at it for a moment. Then she looked at him. "She's not coming back," Emma said. "Is she?" Not a question. The phrasing of a child who had been awake in the dark making her own conclusions, who had arrived at something and needed it confirmed, not explained. Steele looked at the photograph, at the woman laughing in the sunlight with no idea of the future. He looked at Emma. "No," he said. "She's not." Emma put both hands flat on the table. She pressed them down hard, like she was trying to push through to something underneath. And then she took one careful breath. One long, controlled breath. The kind of breath that cost something. "Okay," she said. That was all. Okay. One word that carried the weight of everything she didn't know how to carry yet. Everything she was going to spend years learning how to put down. Steele stood up. He went to the refrigerator. He had eggs, half a stick of butter, some milk that was probably still good. He had bread. He didn't have anything a child would want for breakfast. No cereal, no juice, no fruit. But he had eggs, and eggs were something. "You eat eggs?" he asked. "Yes," Emma said. He cooked. He didn't talk, and she didn't talk, and the trailer filled with the smell of butter in a pan and the sound of eggs cracking and rain starting again against the roof, softer this time, more resigned, and it was the most domestic thing Steele Morrison had done in 15 years, and it felt like wearing someone else's clothes. Not wrong exactly, just unfamiliar in every specific way. He put the plate in front of her. She ate. He poured her a glass of milk and she drank it, and when she was done, she wiped her mouth with the back of her hand and looked at the photograph again. "My Aunt Sarah is going to come," she said. "Yeah, probably." "I don't want to go with her." Steele sat down across from her. He folded his hands on the table. "Why?" Emma looked at him. She looked at him for a long time with those dark eyes, and he waited, because he understood that some things needed waiting for, that you couldn't reach in and pull them out of a person, that the best you could do was make the space wide enough for them to come on their own. "She scares my mom," Emma said finally. "Scared. She scared my mom." The past tense correction was small and terrible, and Emma made it without flinching, and Steele felt it go through him like a wire pulled tight. "How do you know?" he asked. "Because my mom's voice changed when she called," Emma said. "Every time. My mom's voice is—" She stopped, corrected again. "Was loud. She laughed loud. She talked loud. But when Aunt Sarah called, she got small, like she was trying to take up less space." Steele said nothing. He filed it. His phone buzzed on the table. He'd forgotten he'd left it there. He reached over and flipped it. Crow. Outside. Steele pushed back from the table, went to the front door, opened it. Crow was sitting on his bike at the end of the short gravel drive, engine off, one boot on the ground. He was a lean man, 53, with a face that had spent 30 years in wind and weather and had the texture to prove it. His cut was the same as Steele's, iron remnants, the same worn gold lettering. But Crow's had more patches, more years. He was wearing a wool cap pulled low over a shaved head, and he had a paper coffee cup in one hand that he raised slightly when Steele appeared in the doorway. Steele walked out in his boots and jeans, no jacket, and the cold hit him flat across the chest, but he didn't go back for the jacket because Crow was already looking at him with that particular look. Not concern. Crow didn't do concern. It was more like assessment, like a mechanic looking at an engine that's been running wrong. And Steele wasn't in the mood to make the walk back inside feel like a retreat. "You look like hell," Crow said. "I know." 6-year-old girl in your trailer. Yeah. Crow looked at the door, then back at Steele. He took a drink of his coffee. Delgado called the club's registered address this morning, looking for you. What'd she say? That she's coming at 10, that she's bringing someone from the county. Crow paused. Family liaison, whatever that means. Steele checked his watch. It was 7:40. I need you to run a name, Steele said. Sarah Cole, relation of the mother, claims she's the aunt. Emma doesn't want to go near her. Crow's eyes moved. Slow, steady. How good of a reason is that? Good enough? Steele. Crow set the coffee cup on his tank. His voice dropped, not softer exactly, but more precise, the way his voice went when he was saying something that mattered. You know what this looks like. A man with your sheet, your affiliation, your... He gestured vaguely at all of Steele. You can't just keep a child because she's scared of her aunt. I know that. So what's the play? The play is you run the name, Steele said, and I figure the rest out by 10. Crow looked at him for another 5 seconds. Then he picked up his coffee cup and took another drink and said, Gracie already ran it. Steele went still. Gracie was their intelligence. Not an official title, nothing official about anything they did, but Gracie Maldonado had been running backgrounds and financials for the Iron Remnants for 8 years, since her brother Decker had patched in, and she'd decided that if he was going to ride with outlaws, she was at least going to make sure they were informed outlaws. She worked county records during the day and knew how to find things that weren't meant to be findable. And, Steele said, Crow reached into his jacket, pulled out a folded piece of paper, held it out. Steele took it, unfolded it. Sarah Cole, 41 years old, licensed real estate attorney in Keller County, no criminal record, clean credit, substantial assets. Board member of 2 children's charitable foundations, the kind of thing that looked good in a courtroom. Divorced once, 2018, no children of her own. And then, at the bottom, in Gracie's handwriting, Rachel Cole filed a protective order request against Sarah Cole, March of this year. Request withdrawn 6 weeks later. No official reason on record. Check the withdrawal. Steele read it twice. He refolded the paper. Rachel filed for a protective order and then withdrew it, he said. 6 weeks later, Crow said. People withdraw those for 2 reasons. Either the threat went away, or the threat got worse and pulling the order was the only way to manage it. She was running, Steele said. He wasn't asking. He was assembling. In the car last night, she was running. Crow was quiet for a moment. Then, we don't know that for certain. Emma said her mother's voice changed every time Sarah called, went small. Steele looked at the trailer door. A woman with a protective order and a 6-year-old doesn't drive through a rainstorm at midnight unless she's running. Maybe, Crow said, or maybe she was just driving home and the weather was bad and she lost control. He let that sit for a moment. Then, I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm saying a judge isn't going to care about your read on it. They're going to care about a clean record versus, I know what they're going to care about. So what do you want from me? Steele handed the paper back. I want Gracie on the withdrawal. Why Rachel pulled the order. Who she talked to in those 6 weeks. Whether there was any legal pressure, financial pressure, anything. He looked at Crow. And I want you here at 10. Crow raised an eyebrow. You want the road sergeant of the Iron Remnants sitting in your living room when the county social worker shows up. I want someone who knows how to look legitimate when it matters, Steele said. You own the hardware store on Meridian. You've got a business license and a tax ID, and you coached youth football for 3 years. When you want to, you look like a regular citizen. That is the most offensive thing you've ever said to me. Will you be here? Crow looked at him for a long moment. There was something moving in that look. Not warmth exactly. Crow and warmth had a complicated relationship, but something like recognition, like seeing a man pick up something heavy after years of watching him refuse to. Yeah, Crow said. I'll be here. He started his bike. The engine turned over with that low, barrel-chested sound that Steele had been hearing since he was 25 years old, and somehow the sound of it in the cold morning air made everything slightly more manageable. Crow pulled out of the drive, and Steele went back inside. Emma had moved to the couch with her photograph. She'd found the remote and turned on the television, volume low, and was watching something without really watching it, her eyes going past the screen to some middle distance where she was working through things that would take her years to articulate. Steele stood in the small living room and looked at the space through her eyes and thought, "This is not a home for a child." The thought was not self-pity, just inventory. The walls were bare except for a metal shelf with 6 motorcycle manuals and a faded road map of the Southwest. The furniture was functional and cheerless. There were no photographs anywhere. He'd learned early that photographs were just evidence of things you'd lost. There was nothing soft, nothing warm, nothing that said someone lived here instead of just slept here. "I need to go get a few things," he said, "before someone comes at 10. Emma looked at him. "For me?" "For the place." "I can come," she said, not asking, stating. He almost said no. Then he looked at her sitting on his couch in a dead woman's world with a photograph and a television she wasn't watching, and he said, "Get your shoes on." They went to the Save-A-Lot on Fletcher, which was the closest thing Millhaven had to a grocery store on the east side. Steele pushed the cart. Emma walked beside him with her hands in the pockets of her raincoat and made no demands, which was somehow harder to manage than demands would have been. He got juice, he got cereal, stood in the aisle for a long time looking at boxes until Emma reached past him and took the one with the bird on it and put it in the cart with the authority of someone who had made this decision before and saw no reason to debate it. He got milk and fruit and bread and the specific brand of peanut butter that Emma pointed to without him asking, and a bar of soap that smelled like something other than motor oil, and a box of crayons he didn't plan for and found in the cart anyway and didn't take out. At the register, the woman ahead of them in line glanced back and did the thing people did, the double take, the quick accounting of Steele's appearance, the slight repositioning of her body, and then the glance at Emma beside him, and the confusion that followed the glance because the math didn't compute. A man like that with a child like this, and the woman not knowing what conclusion to land on. Emma didn't notice, or she noticed and had already classified it under things that weren't her problem. Steele paid cash. They drove back. At 9:55, Crow's truck pulled up. Not his bike, his truck, a 10-year-old Silverado that he'd had repainted twice and kept clean, and he was wearing a flannel shirt under his cut instead of just the cut, which was as close to respectable as Crow got, and Steele appreciated the effort. Delgado arrived at 10:03 with a woman named Priya Anand, county family liaison, mid-30s, efficient, with the kind of careful warmth that is entirely genuine and entirely professional at the same time. She came in and crouched down to Emma's level and introduced herself, and Emma shook her hand with a gravity that made Anand blink. Delgado took Steele into the kitchen while Anand sat with Emma. Crow positioned himself at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee like he'd always been there. "Mr. Morrison," Delgado said, and set her clipboard on the table. "Sarah Cole has contacted our office." "Figured she would," Steele said. "She's Emma's next of kin. Her claim is strong." "Her claim is documented," Steele said. He looked at Delgado steadily. "Whether it's safe is a different question." Delgado's eyes moved to Crow and then back. "Is there something specific you're alleging?" Rachel Cole filed a protective order against Sarah Cole in March. She withdrew it in May. "I'd like to know why before that woman gets within 10 feet of Emma." Delgado was quiet for a moment. "How do you know that?" "Does it matter?" "Mr. Morrison." "Does the protective order matter?" Steele said, not aggressive, just direct. Just laying the thing on the table and waiting for her to decide what to do with it. Delgado picked up her pen, set it down, picked it up again. "I can flag it for review," she said carefully, "but I can't hold off the family claim indefinitely without cause. You understand that?" "How long do I have?" "Formal hearing will be scheduled, probably 10 to 14 days. She looked at him. "In the meantime, Emma stays with you under the emergency placement, but Sarah Cole has the right to supervised visitation." "Supervised?" Steele said. "Yes, supervised." In the living room, Emma was talking to Anand in that low, measured way she talked to everyone. Steele couldn't make out the words. He could make out the tone. Careful, cooperative, not warm. The way you talk to someone when you're trying to give them information without giving them access. Crow set his coffee cup down. "The protective order withdrawal," he said to Delgado, quiet, conversational, the specific register of a man who sounds like he's just making talk. You pull that file, you're going to find something that makes this more complicated. I'm just saying that before you hand a traumatized 6-year-old to a next of kin who her mother was legally attempting to stay away from, he shrugged. I'd read the file first. Delgado looked at Crow. And you are? James Crowell. I own a hardware store on Meridian. I also coached this man's kid's soccer team when she was 8 years old. He met her eyes. Some people have context that a file doesn't show. Delgado looked at him for another moment. Then she looked at Steele. Then she wrote something on her clipboard. 10 to 14 days, she said. Don't do anything I need to document. After she left, Crow stood in the kitchen doorway and looked at Steele with the expression he used when he was deciding whether to say something. What? Steele said. She's going to fight for this girl, Crow said. Sarah Cole. I've seen women like that. All the paperwork in the right order, all the right connections, all the language of concern without any of the substance of it. He paused. She's going to come in clean, and she's going to come in hard, and she's going to make you look like exactly what your sheet says you are. I know. You need a lawyer. I know. Steele. Crow's voice dropped again. You need to call Lily. The name landed in the kitchen like something heavy dropped on a wood floor. Steele turned to look out the window above the sink. The backyard of the trailer, if you could call it that, really just a strip of dead grass and a chain-link fence, was wet and gray and nothing. Lily's not part of this, he said. Lily's a paralegal, Crow said. She works family law. She knows every judge in Keller County, and she knows how these hearings go, and she is the single most useful person you could have right now. He paused. Also, she texted you last night and you didn't answer, which means she already knows something's happening, and ignoring her is... I know what ignoring her is. Then don't do it. Steele turned from the window, looked at his hands, looked at the kitchen, the new bread on the counter, the juice in the refrigerator, the box of cereal with the bird on it. She hasn't spoken to me in 3 years, he said. She texted you last night, Crow said. That's the door opening. You just have to walk through it before she changes her mind. From the living room came the sound of a crayon on paper. Emma had found the box. She was drawing something at the coffee table, tongue between her teeth, the concentrated industry of a child making something in a world that had taken everything else. Steele watched her through the doorway for a moment. Then he picked up his phone. He didn't call. He wasn't ready to call. He texted, I'm okay. Can we talk this week? There's something I need to tell you, something that matters. He set the phone down. Emma looked up from her drawing. Who were you texting? Someone I owe an apology. Emma considered this. My mom said apologies only work if you mean them. Your mom was right about a lot of things, Steele said. Emma looked at him for a moment, then she went back to her drawing. 3 days passed, then 4. They found a rhythm, the two of them, in the way that people find rhythms when they're forced to share space, and both of them are too stubborn or too broken to negotiate it out loud. Emma woke early. Steele was always already awake. She ate eggs or cereal, one or the other, no requests, whatever he made. She spent mornings drawing at the coffee table or looking out the window at the street. Afternoons she watched television, nature documentaries mostly. She had an inexplicable devotion to any program involving large animals in cold weather. And Steele worked in the small garage bay behind the trailer where he did repair work, keeping the door cracked so he could hear her. He had no idea if this was right. He had no reference point for right. He knew she was eating and sleeping and breathing, and he knew she hadn't stopped doing the thing where she read his face every time she came into a room, that constant checking, and he thought probably she'd been doing that most of her short life, and it would take a long time to unlearn. On the 5th day, Crow called. Gracie found the withdrawal, he said when Steele picked up. Rachel Cole pulled the protective order after her attorney received a letter from Sarah Cole's legal team. 17-page letter, alleging that Rachel had a history of financial instability, substance abuse, and unfit living conditions. He paused. None of which checked out when Gracie dug into it. But here's the thing. The letter mentioned Emma by name, referenced Emma's welfare specifically. Inferred that if Rachel pursued the protective order, Sarah would file for emergency custody review. Steele held the phone and said nothing. Rachel pulled the order to protect Emma, Crow said. If she fought Sarah legally, Sarah would use Emma as leverage, so she withdrew and she ran instead. Steele looked at the garage wall, the grease-stained pegboard with its hanging tools, the specific orderly chaos of a man who needed things in their places because most of his life hadn't been. That letter is an implied threat, Steele said, against a woman's right to legally protect herself and her child. It's 17 pages of very careful, very legal implied threat, Crow said. Gracie says it's the kind of thing that costs about $25,000 to write and is specifically designed to not cross any lines that matter in court. What about the foundations, Sarah's charity work? Clean on the surface, Crow said, but Gracie flagged something. The main foundation, Children First Coalition, received a large donation 3 years ago from a development firm called Renford Group, same firm that was in a business dispute with Rachel Cole's late husband, Emma's father. He died 4 years ago. Steele stood up straight. Gracie thinks there's a financial angle, Crow said. Something to do with an inheritance or a property holding. She's still untangling it, but Steele... His voice shifted. If there's money involved, this isn't just a custody dispute. This is acquisition. They were both quiet for a moment. Sarah's not trying to save Emma, Steele said. She's trying to control something, Crow said. Yeah. Emma's voice came from the living room, calm, directed at the television. That's a musk ox. They can survive 40 below. Steele looked at the cracked garage door, at the sliver of living room visible through it, at the top of Emma's head bent over the coffee table with her crayons. Set up a church meet, Steele said. Not a church meet. That was the habit of saying it, the old language, a club meeting, full table. I need everyone on this. Steele, Crow said carefully. You sure you want to put the full club on this? Because once we're in, we're in. This isn't... I know what it is. A custody hearing isn't exactly our territory. No, Steele said, but protecting people who can't protect themselves is. A beat of silence. Then Crow said, I'll make the calls tomorrow night, 8 o'clock. Riker's shop. He hung up. Steele stood in the garage and breathed in the smell of oil and cold air and thought about the thing Crow had said. Once we're in, we're in. He'd said it like a warning. Steele heard it like a commitment. He went back inside. Emma was drawing a musk ox, or attempting to, a rounded brown shape with horns that curved more aggressively than anatomically accurate, but had obvious conviction behind them. Did you know musk oxen circle around their calves when predators come? She said without looking up. They all face outward, so the calves are in the middle. Every single one of them. No, Steele said. I didn't know that. It doesn't always work, Emma said. But they always do it. She kept drawing. Steele stood in the middle of his living room and looked at this 6-year-old who had been teaching herself how to survive since the moment he'd found her in the rain. And he thought about circles, about standing outward, about the thing that happened when people who were dangerous decided to be dangerous in the right direction. The meeting at Riker's shop the following night was attended by 11 men. They came in from the cold on their bikes, and they filled the back bay of Riker's auto shop, a tall, cavernous space smelling of rubber and metal and decades of work. And they sat on folding chairs and tool chests, and one man, Beto, sat directly on the hood of a partially dismantled Buick, and nobody told him to get off. They were not young men. Iron Remnants had never been a young club. They were men in their 40s and 50s with professional histories and domestic histories, and other histories that didn't fit into either of those categories. And they had the specific quality of men who had learned the hard way what to spend energy on and what to let go. Steele stood at the front and told them everything. He didn't editorialize. He didn't ask for permission. He laid out what he knew. Emma, Rachel, the protective order, Sarah Cole, the financial angle, the custody hearing, and when he was done, he said, I'm not asking you to do anything illegal. I'm asking you to help me find the truth before a 10-day window closes and a child gets handed to someone her mother was trying to run from. He looked at the room. The room looked back at him. Big Tommy, the largest man in any room he ever entered, retired ironworker, 9-year member, said, What do you need? Gracie on the financial angle, Steele said. Full focus. Whatever Rachel's husband owned that Sarah might want, find it. He looked at Decker, Gracie's brother, who nodded. I need someone in the courtroom who looks like they belong there. That's Crow, and it's not negotiable. He looked at Crow, who lifted his chin. And I need someone to watch the aunt. The room shifted. Watch her how, said a man named Pettit, quiet-voiced, former military, the kind of still that meant something. Movement, associates, anyone she's meeting with in the next 10 days who isn't her known legal team. Steele looked at Pettit. Not interference, observation. Pettit said nothing. Then, okay. One more thing, Steele said. He paused. My daughter Lily works family law. I've reached out to her. If she's willing to help, she say yes? Crow asked. She hasn't said no. The room held that for a moment. Riker, the shop's owner, a wide-faced man with hands that had built and broken things in equal measure, said, How's the girl? Steele looked at him. She drew a musk ox today. Riker nodded slowly, like that meant something, and maybe it did. The meeting lasted another 30 minutes on logistics and then broke up with the efficiency of men who had been in rooms together, making decisions long enough that they'd stopped needing to perform agreement. They just reached it and moved. Steele was the last one out. He stood in the cold outside Riker's shop and listened to the bikes start up one by one and pull out of the lot, the sound of it like something spoken in a language he'd been fluent in since he was 22 and had never learned to stop hearing as home. His phone lit up in his pocket. Lily, I read about the accident on Route 9. I know you found the girl. Crow told me some of it. Don't be angry at him. Are you actually asking for help, or is this one of those things where you gesture at asking and then disappear? Steele looked at the message for a long time. He typed, I'm actually asking. 3 minutes passed. He stood in the cold and waited. Lily, I'll come Thursday. Don't clean the trailer. I know what it looks like. Have coffee ready. Then, after a pause of about 30 seconds, Lily, also, I haven't forgiven you. I want you to know that going in. This is not that. This is just, a kid needs help and I can help, okay? Steele read it twice. He typed, okay, that's enough, thank you. He pocketed the phone and walked to his bike, and the cold wrapped around him like it always did, like a hand flat against the chest. Thursday was 2 days away. Sarah Cole's first supervised visitation was scheduled for Friday, which meant there were less than 48 hours to build something strong enough to matter before the woman with the clean record and the 17-page legal letter and the charitable foundations walked into a room with Emma and started performing the thing she'd been performing for years. Steele started his bike. The engine turned over and the sound of it moved through the cold air, and he sat there for a moment with his hands on the bars and thought about what Crow had said. Once we're in, we're in. He put it in gear. He had 2 days and a broken family he hadn't earned yet, and a 6-year-old who drew musk oxen because she'd been paying attention to how circles worked. He pulled out of Riker's lot. He didn't see the dark sedan parked across the street. He didn't see the woman inside it, on her phone, watching the bikes leave one by one with the particular focused attention of someone who is not observing but cataloging. He didn't see the moment she raised her phone and took a photograph of his plate. Sarah Cole set her phone in her lap and looked at the Iron Remnants MC lot until the last bike was gone. Then she dialed. It's me, she said when the line connected. The biker has club backup, full group. She paused. It doesn't matter. He still has a sheet and he still looks like what he looks like. And when I walk into that visitation on Friday, Emma is going to see exactly who I am and who he isn't. A voice on the other end said something. No, Sarah said. I'm not worried about the protective order. Rachel withdrew it. Her voice was smooth, unhurried, the voice of someone who had planned for every contingency. And Rachel, a pause, a small, careful calibration in her tone. Rachel isn't a problem anymore. She ended the call. Across town, in the trailer on Culvert Road, Emma was asleep on the couch with her photograph on the cushion beside her, and the television was showing footage of musk oxen standing in a circle in the snow, their backs to the wind, their calves invisible and protected in the center, and the narrator was saying that this formation had not changed in 10,000 years because it had never needed to. Steele pulled the truck into the drive and cut the engine and sat in the dark for a moment. He didn't know yet what Sarah Cole had said on that phone. He didn't know yet what was in the paperwork she was already preparing, the photographs she had already obtained of the Iron Remnants meeting, the affidavit she was having drafted by a PI who had been watching Steele for 3 days, the motion she would file Monday morning citing criminal affiliation, endangerment, and unfit living conditions as grounds for immediate emergency custody transfer. He didn't know yet that Monday was 4 days away, and that by Monday morning the narrative would already be written and the only question left would be whether the truth could catch up to it in time. He went inside. He checked on Emma. He went to bed. He lay in the dark and stared at the ceiling, and somewhere in the fibrous tangle of exhaustion and calculation and the specific weight of caring about something after years of not, he felt the thing that came before sleep. Not peace, nothing that clean, just the body deciding it was done for the night, whether the mind was ready or not. His eyes closed, and in the morning the motion was already. The motion landed on Monday at 8:47 in the morning. Steele was in the garage when his phone rang. Crow, not texting, calling, which meant it was bad enough that typing felt insufficient. He picked up on the second ring and stood with a wrench in one hand and grease on the other and listened while Crow read the motion's key language in a flat voice that meant he was controlling something. Emergency petition for immediate custody transfer. Filed by Sarah Cole's legal team, Hartwell and Associates, Keller County Family Court. Grounds cited: known criminal affiliation with Iron Remnants Motorcycle Club, an organization named in 3 separate law enforcement investigations in the past decade. Prior record including aggravated assault and disorderly conduct. Photographic evidence of the respondent, Steele Morrison, meeting with club members at an undisclosed location on the evening of November 14th, in what the filing described as a coordinated gathering. Affidavit from a licensed private investigator who had observed the residence on Culvert Road for 72 hours and noted the presence of multiple individuals with criminal records entering and exiting the property. And then the final paragraph, the one that made Steele's hand tighten on the wrench until his knuckles went pale. A declaration from a licensed clinical psychologist, retained by Sarah Cole's team, stating that based on the documented environment and the respondent's behavioral history, the child, Emma Cole, was at significant risk of emotional and developmental harm and required immediate removal to a stable, appropriate placement. Crow stopped reading. The garage was very quiet. The psychologist never met Emma, Steele said. No, Crow said. She never came here. She never observed anything. She reviewed the PI's report and the background file, Crow said. Apparently that's sufficient to generate an opinion, legally speaking. Steele set the wrench down on the workbench. Carefully. He set it down carefully because the alternative was putting it through the wall, and that wouldn't help anything. When's the hearing? He said. Wednesday. They fast-tracked it. Emergency motion, judge signs off on an expedited timeline. Crow paused. Lily needs to file a response today. This morning, if possible. Steele, she needs to be your attorney of record before this afternoon, or I'll call her now. There's something else. Steele waited. The PI's report, Crow said. It lists the license plates of every bike that came to Riker's shop Thursday night. All 11. It names Pettit, it names Beto, it names Riker. It's going to pull every one of their records into the motion as supporting evidence of a dangerous environment. He paused again, and this pause was different, heavier. Steele, I need you to understand what's about to happen to this club if this goes badly. Not just to you, to all of us. Steele understood. He'd understood it when he'd called the meeting. He hadn't said it out loud because saying it out loud would have made the weight real, and he'd needed the men there, had needed them without the weight being spoken. I know, he said. We're in, Crow said. I'm not calling to pull back. I'm calling because I need you to know what we're walking into. His voice was steady, factual, the voice of a man who had made his decision and was now just naming the terrain. Every man at Riker's Thursday night knew what could come back on them. Nobody's surprised. But you need to know. Steele stood in the garage with his greasy hand and his cold air and his 11 brothers' names on a PI's report. And he thought about circles, about standing outward. Tell them, Steele said. Tell them I know. Tell them I won't forget it." He hung up and called Lily. She answered on the first ring, which meant she'd already heard, which meant Crow had called her first, and that was exactly the right thing to do. "I've read the motion," she said. No greeting, straight to it. "How fast can you get here?" 20 minutes. "Make it 15 and steal—" She stopped. He could hear her breathing, controlled, the way she breathed when she was furious and managing it. They retained Hartwell. Marcus Hartwell specifically. "I need you to understand that this is not a standard custody motion. Hartwell does not take standard custody motions. He takes cases where there is substantial money involved and a client who is willing to spend whatever it takes to win." "How much money?" Steele said. "That's what I need to find out," Lily said. "Come now." He checked on Emma first. She was at the coffee table with her crayons, working on something large and complicated that appeared to involve a landscape of some kind, mountain ranges or possibly large waves. It was hard to tell. The television was on low. The Nature Channel again, something about Arctic wolves. "I need to go out for a couple hours," Steele said. "Crow's wife is going to come stay with you. Her name is Diane. You've met her." Emma looked up. She read his face in 3 seconds, the way she always did. "Something happened," she said. "I'm handling it." "About my aunt." He looked at her steadily. He'd promised himself he wouldn't lie to her. Not because lying would have been wrong in the abstract, but because she'd been lied to by the shape of the world her whole short life. The comfortable lies people tell children to manage them. And he wasn't going to be another thing she had to unlearn. "Yes," he said, "about your aunt." Emma looked at her drawing. She picked up a brown crayon and made a careful line. "She's going to try to take me," she said. "She's going to try," Steele said. "I'm going to make sure she doesn't." Emma kept drawing, then without looking up, "My mom tried to stop her too." The sentence was quiet and even and landed in the room like something dropped from a height. "What do you mean?" Steele said. He kept his voice level. He crouched down to her level the way he'd crouched in the ditch on Route 9, trying to reduce the size of himself, trying to be something a child could look at without flinching. Emma put the crayon down. She looked at him with those ancient dark eyes and said, "Before we left, before the drive, my mom was on the phone for a long time and she was crying and she thought I was asleep, but I wasn't." She paused. "She said, 'I have everything. I have all of it. If you come near Emma again, I will bury you with it.'" The air in the room changed. Steele was very still. "Who was she talking to?" he asked. "I don't know," Emma said, but she wasn't scared when she said it. She sounded— Emma searched for the word. "Like when you're not scared anymore because you decided something." Steele stood up. His mind was already moving. Not racing. Steele's mind didn't race. It moved the way cold water moves, finding the path of least resistance with absolute inexorability. Rachel had something. Evidence. She'd said so herself on the phone, to someone, the night before she drove into the rain. She'd been running and she'd had leverage and she'd known she had it. The accident had destroyed her car. The car that she'd been driving away in. The car that had been towed to Millhaven Impound 48 hours after the accident. "Keep drawing," Steele said. "Diane will be here in 10 minutes. He was in his truck before Diane's car turned onto Culvert Road. He waited until he saw her pull up, waited until she was at the door and Emma had let her in, and then he was moving. Lily's apartment was on the second floor of a building on Kessler Street, 6 blocks from the county courthouse, a choice that was either convenient or strategic, and knowing Lily, it was both. Steele had been there once 2 years ago to return a box of things she'd left at his trailer when she'd cleared out her phone number and her forwarding address and the version of herself that still tried with him. He'd left the box outside her door and driven away without knocking. He knocked this time. She opened the door and he looked at her and she looked at him. And there were 3 years of wreckage in the air between them, and neither of them named it because there was no time, and also because some things don't need naming. They just need to be lived alongside. Lily Morrison was 31 years old and looked like him around the eyes. That same watchful quality, the same tendency to read a room before entering it, but everything else she'd gotten from her mother, which was to say she was lean and dark-haired and had a stillness about her that was warm instead of cold. She was in a blazer and had a legal pad in her hand, and she stepped back from the door to let him in and said, "Sit down." He sat. She stood. She always thought better standing. He knew this about her the way he knew everything about her. Distantly, incompletely, through the specific lens of a man who had been present for her childhood in body and absent from it in every way that mattered. "The motion is aggressive," she said. "Hartwell is experienced, and the psychologist's declaration, while unethical in my opinion, is technically legal. Without a counter-narrative, the judge sees a biker with a sheet and a club meeting photographed 3 days before the hearing." She looked at him. "Tell me about the protective order." He told her. Everything Crow had told him, everything Gracie had found. She wrote on her legal pad, fast and small, and didn't interrupt. When he was done, she said, "The withdrawal is the key. If we can show that Rachel withdrew under legal duress, that the letter from Hartwell's firm constituted implied coercion, it changes the entire frame." She tapped the pen against the pad. "But Rachel is gone. We can't put her on the stand. Her testimony doesn't exist." "Emma said something this morning," Steele said. He told her that too. The phone call, the night before the accident. Rachel's voice going from scared to decided. "I have everything. I have all of it." Lily stopped writing. She looked at him. "You think she had documentation, something she was going to use?" "She was running," Steele said. "Not running blind. She told whoever she called that she had evidence." "And her car went into a guardrail 6 hours later," Lily said. The sentence sat between them for a moment. "That's not—" Steele started. "I know," Lily said. "I know it could be exactly what it looks like. A woman driving in the rain made a bad turn." She set her pen down. "But if she was threatening to expose something, and Sarah Cole knew she was running, and Sarah Cole has the resources to—" She stopped, pressed her lips together. "I'm not saying that. I'm not going to say that until there's something that makes me say it." She picked up the pen again. "The car. The impound. I was thinking the same thing. Steele, if there's something in that car, you cannot be the one to find it." "I know. I mean that specifically, not you, not anyone with an iron remnants patch. The moment any of you touch that car, it becomes tainted and Hartwell burns you with it." She looked at him hard. "But if I file a motion today requesting preservation of the vehicle and contents as potential evidence in an ongoing custody proceeding, and the county assigns an independent examiner, can you do that before Wednesday?" "I can file it in 2 hours," she said. "Whether the judge moves on it before Wednesday depends on factors I can't control." She picked up her legal pad and moved toward her desk in the corner, all efficiency now, the emotional weather of the room pushed to the perimeter where it would wait. "I need everything Gracie has on the financial connection. The Renford Group, the inheritance, all of it. Send it to this address." She wrote on a sticky note and handed it to him without looking up. "Encrypted. Don't send it from your personal phone." Steele took the note, stood up. "Lily," he said. She kept writing. "I know this isn't Send me the files," she said. "Go back to Emma." He went back to Emma. The afternoon was quiet and domestic in a way that felt surreal against the motion filed at Hartwell and Associates and the impound lot on the south end of Millhaven and the thing Rachel Cole had said on the phone the night she died. Emma drew. Steele sat at the kitchen table with his phone and relayed Gracie's files to Lily's encrypted address, and Diane made tea that nobody asked for and left it on the counter, and it sat there cooling in the thin afternoon light. At 4:15, Gracie called him directly. This was unusual enough that he took it immediately. "I found it," Gracie said. Her voice was controlled, but her breathing was faster than normal. "The inheritance. Emma's father, Marcus Cole, died 4 years ago, cardiac event. He had a property holding, commercial land parcel, 47 acres on the north edge of Millhaven, currently undeveloped but zoned for mixed commercial use." She paused. "The Renford Group has been trying to acquire it for 3 years. It was in probate. Rachel was the surviving spouse. Emma was listed as the secondary beneficiary. The parcel's current assessed value." Another pause. "Steele, it's valued at $4.2 million. Steele sat very still. "And Sarah Cole," Gracie said. Sarah Cole's legal name before she changed it in 2015 was Sarah Renford. The kitchen went away. The trailer went away. Everything went quiet and flat and very clear the way things go when a truth lands that reorganizes everything around it. "She's a Renford," Steele said. "She's the sister of the firm's founder," Gracie said. "Daniel Renford." The name change was 2 years after Marcus Cole married Rachel. 2 years after this parcel became tied to the Cole family. She took a breath. "Steele, this was never about Emma. It was never about custody or family or any of it. Sarah Cole needs legal guardianship of Emma to control the estate until Emma turns 18, at which point, if Sarah has been guardian long enough and has positioned the estate correctly, she can facilitate a sale," Steele said, to her brother's firm. $4.2 million, Gracie said. "Split however she needs to split it." Steele stood up. He walked to the window. Outside, the street was gray and cold and ordinary, the specific ordinariness of Culvert Road in late November, and he looked at it and thought about a woman who had called herself an aunt for years and filed for protective orders withdrawals, and retained Marcus Hartwell and hired a private investigator to photograph biker meetings. All of it, the whole architecture of concern and care and family, built to move $4.2 million in land from a 6-year-old's name into her brother's development portfolio. Emma's voice came from the living room. "Diane, do Arctic foxes change color in winter, or are they always white?" "I think they change," Diane said, "for camouflage." "That's smart," Emma said. "If you look like the thing trying to hurt you, it can't find you." Steele turned from the window. He said to Gracie, "Send everything to Lily, right now, all of it." "Already sending," Gracie said. "Is there more?" "Maybe," she said. "I'm still pulling. There are some transactions in the foundation accounts that don't add up to me, and there's—" She hesitated. The hesitation was unlike her, Gracie, who was always precise and direct, and the hesitation made the hair on the back of Steele's neck stand up. "Steele, the night Rachel died, there's a traffic camera on Route 9 at mile marker 14, half a mile before the accident site." He waited. "The county pulled that footage for the accident report," Gracie said. "Standard procedure, but I have a contact in the county IT department. The footage was requested a second time, 4 days after the accident, by someone outside the county system." "Who?" Steele said. "The request came through a private firm," Gracie said. "A security and investigations company called Meridian Consulting. They're licensed, they do corporate work, they've done work for—" She stopped. "Gracie, they've done work for Hartwell and Associates 3 times in the past 2 years," she said, "including once in a family law case." The word came out of Steele's mouth before he decided to say it. They were watching her. "I don't know that," Gracie said quickly. "I don't know what the footage shows. I don't know who else was on that road. All I know is that someone working for Hartwell's firm pulled the traffic footage from the night Rachel Cole died." She paused. "And it wasn't the police." Steele stood in the kitchen of his trailer on Culvert Road and breathed. He breathed the way he'd taught himself to breathe 20 years ago, in the years when he'd been a different kind of man. The kind that solved problems with speed and force and didn't consider the consequences. The deliberate breath that slowed the thing down, that put 1 second between the impulse and the action, that gave the rational mind just enough runway to get off the ground. He breathed, and then he called Crow. "I need you to go to Rikers," he said when Crow picked up. "Call Pettit. Call everyone, right now. Steele?" "Rachel Cole may not have died accidentally," Steele said. Flat, even. The way you say true things that shouldn't be true. Hartwell's people pulled the traffic footage from Route 9 the night she went off the road. Sarah Cole is a Renford. Emma is sitting on a $4 million land parcel that Sarah's family has been trying to acquire for 3 years. He paused. If Rachel had evidence and someone knew she was running with it— "Stop," Crow said. "Crow, stop. Don't say the rest of that on a phone." His voice had gone very quiet and very controlled. "Are you at the trailer?" "Yes." "Stay there. Don't let Emma out of your sight. I'll have Pettit outside your street within the hour." A beat. "You understand me? Don't let her out of your sight." Steele looked down the hall toward the living room. He could see the edge of Emma's drawing through the doorway, the large shape of something, those confident crayon lines. "I understand," he said. He hung up. He stood in the kitchen and looked at the crayon drawing visible through the doorway and thought about a woman saying, "I have everything. I have all of it," in the dark of the night before she died. Thought about a traffic camera. Thought about a private investigator's car watching Route 9 at midnight in the rain. Thought about a 6-year-old girl standing in a ditch beside a wrecked car in the dark, holding a blood-stained photograph, not running, just waiting. She'd been waiting for someone to stop. He went to the living room doorway. Emma was on her stomach on the floor now, the drawing spread in front of her, adding something in the upper right corner with a green crayon. Diane was in the armchair with her tea, watching her with the soft attention of a woman who had raised children and knew how to be present without hovering. "Emma," Steele said. She looked up. "Your mom's photograph," he said, "the one she always kept in her jacket. Was that the only thing she kept there?" Emma thought about it. "Sometimes," she said. "Sometimes she kept other stuff, a folded-up paper, a little card drive thing." She demonstrated with her fingers, the size of a USB drive. She called it her insurance. Everything in Steele's chest went still. "When did she take it out?" he asked. "Did you ever see her take it out?" "Sometimes she checked it," Emma said. "Like when she thought I wasn't watching. She'd take it out and look at it and put it back." She cocked her head. "Like the way you check your phone, but it's not a phone." Was she wearing her jacket the night of the accident? Emma thought. She always wore it. It was her good jacket. She said it was the one thing she bought herself after my dad died that was just for her. Steele looked at Diane. Diane looked at him. She'd heard enough. Her face had gone careful, and still, the way faces go when they've assembled the same picture you've assembled, and neither of you wants to be the one to say it first. Rachel's jacket. In the wrecked car. In the impound lot on the south side of Millhaven, and a paper or a USB drive in the pocket that a dead woman had called her insurance, and Hartwell's people already pulling traffic footage from the night she died. Which meant the clock on the impound lot was not 10 to 14 days. It was however long it took Hartwell's people to make the same connection Steele had just made, if they hadn't already made it, if they hadn't already sent someone to the impound lot with a legal instrument Steele didn't know about yet, if the jacket wasn't already gone, if the insurance wasn't already... His phone rang. Lily. He picked up. "I filed the preservation motion an hour ago," she said. "I just got a call from the clerk's office. There's a problem." Her voice was controlled and he could hear what it was controlling underneath. "There was already a motion filed this morning requesting access to the vehicle contents, filed by Hartwell and Associates. They cited potential evidence in a separate civil matter." She paused. "They filed it at 7 this morning, Steele, before I filed the preservation motion, before they even submitted the custody motion to the court." The sequence assembled itself in his mind with terrible clarity. Hartwell had filed for vehicle access first thing in the morning, then filed the custody motion. The custody motion was the visible fight, the one Steele was supposed to be watching. The vehicle access was the real move, the quiet one, already done before Steele was even awake. "How fast can they get to the car, Steele said. "The access motion is before Judge Teller," Lily said. "Teller is..." She stopped, started again. "Teller's decisions have been favorable to Hartwell's clients in the past. If he signs off on the access motion... Today? Could it happen today?" "It could have happened an hour ago," Lily said. "Steele, I don't know if the car is still..." He was already moving. "Call the impound. Right now. Tell them there's a competing preservation order and nothing gets released until you personally confirm the court's ruling." "I'm already calling," Lily said. "Steele, if it's already gone, call," he said. He was already at the garage, already pulling his jacket from the hook by the door, already checking his keys. He looked back at Diane. She was standing in the living room doorway with Emma beside her. Emma, who had followed the sound of urgency the way children follow anything that breaks the established rhythm. Emma looked at him. That reading look. 3 seconds. "You found something," she said. "Maybe," Steele said. "My mom's insurance," Emma said. He looked at her. She looked back at him with those eyes that had seen too much and understood most of it, and were still somehow, underneath all of it, the eyes of a 6-year-old who believed that the right person stopping on the right road at the right moment was enough to change things. "Yes," he said. "I need to go check on something. You stay with Diane. You don't open the door for anyone except Crow or Pettit, you understand? Yes, Emma said. Emma. He crouched. He met her eyes. I need you to trust me for about 2 more hours. Emma looked at him for a long moment. I already do, she said. I already trusted you on Route 9. He stood up. He went out the door. The cold hit him flat and clean, and he crossed the gravel drive in 4 strides and got in the truck and had the engine running before the door was closed. His phone was ringing. Lily. He picked it up one-handed and backed out of the drive. The impound clerk says there was a court officer there this morning, Lily said. Her voice was tight. An hour ago. With a signed access order from Judge Teller. They allowed access to the vehicle. Steele pulled onto Culvert Road. Did they take anything? He said. The clerk said the officer spent 20 minutes with the vehicle and left with a sealed evidence bag. She stopped. Steele. I'm already driving. It's too late, she said. If they took the jacket, maybe they took the jacket, Steele said, but they didn't know about Emma. What? Emma was with the car, he said. She was in the ditch 20 feet from the vehicle. She grabbed the photograph from her mother's pocket before the EMTs put Rachel on the board. He drove through a red light, checking both ways first, not stopping. She grabbed the photograph. What if she grabbed something else? What if she grabbed it without knowing what it was? What if it's been in that yellow raincoat since Route 9 and nobody ever thought to look because nobody knew it existed except Rachel and the person Rachel called that night and Emma herself? A long silence on the phone. Steele, Lily said quietly, if Emma has that drive, I know. And if Hartwell figures out, I know, he said. That's why I'm driving. He pushed the truck harder through Millhaven's wet gray streets and thought about the car parked outside the Remnants meeting Thursday night. The woman with her phone, the photograph of his license plate. They'd been watching all along. The custody motion, the vehicle access, the PI, the psychologist declaration. None of it was improvised. It was sequenced. It was planned by someone who had been planning it long enough to have contingencies for contingencies, which meant that if they'd been watching Thursday night, they'd been watching before that. They'd been watching since the accident, which meant they might have been watching Emma, which meant they knew she was at the trailer, which meant they knew exactly where to look if they decided the drive wasn't in the car after all. His phone buzzed. Not Lily. Pettit. He answered. Pettit said in his precise, unhurried voice, There's a vehicle on Culvert Road, black SUV. It's been parked 2 houses down from your trailer for 40 minutes. Engine's been running the whole time. Steele felt the cold move through him that had nothing to do with November. Diane and Emma are inside, he said. I know, Pettit said. I'm watching the front. But Steele... A pause. The kind of pause Pettit used when what he was about to say was something he'd rather not have to say. There's a second vehicle, alley behind the trailer. I didn't see it until 5 minutes ago. Steele was already turning the truck around. Don't go in, he said. Not yet. Just hold position. I'm 4 minutes out. They haven't moved, Pettit said. But Steele. 4 minutes. He floored it. And in the trailer on Culvert Road, Emma reached into the pocket of her yellow raincoat for a crayon, and her fingers touched something small and hard and rectangular that she'd put there 9 days ago without thinking, the night a man named Steele had crouched in the rain and told her she was safe, the night she'd grabbed her mother's photo and the little card drive thing had come out with it. And she'd shoved it in her pocket because her hands were full and she'd forgotten about it in the way children forget things that don't yet have a category for importance. And she pulled it out now and looked at it and turned it over in her small fingers under the fluorescent light of the trailer, while 2 vehicles sat outside in the cold with their engines running, and her protector came hard around a corner 4 blocks. Steele came around this corner onto Culvert Road doing 50 in a 25 zone, and he saw the black SUV immediately. 2 houses down, engine running, exhaust curling white in the cold air, tinted windows showing him nothing. He didn't slow down. He pulled the truck hard into his own drive, gravel spraying, and was out of the door before the engine died, moving fast across the gravel toward the front door. And he had his key in the lock in 2 seconds and was inside and Diane was standing in the middle of the living room with her phone in her hand and her jaw set, and Emma was right behind her with the yellow raincoat and the USB drive still in her open palm. "Two vehicles," Diane said. "I saw them from the window." "I know." Steele looked at Emma, at the drive. His eyes moved from it to her face and back. "Where did you find that?" "My pocket," Emma said. "It was in my pocket since Route 9. I forgot about it." She looked at it. "It's my mom's insurance, isn't it?" "Yes," Steele said. She held it out to him. Flat on her palm, small and ordinary, a thing that looked like it cost $4 and was worth $4 million and might be the reason a woman was dead. He took it, closed his fist around it. His phone was already ringing. "Pet it. The alley vehicle just moved. It's circling." "How many in the SUV out front?" "Two that I can see." "They make you?" "No," Pettit said. "I'm in Riker's van. I look like I'm eating lunch." "Call Crow," Steele said. "Now. I need bodies here in 10 minutes." He hung up. He looked at Diane. "Take Emma to the back bedroom. Lock the door. Don't open it unless it's my voice or Crow's." Diane took Emma's hand. Emma went without protest, but she looked at Steele over her shoulder, that reading look, and what she read in his face made her grip Diane's hand tighter. But she didn't look away. She held his eyes for 3 full seconds, the specific 3 seconds of a child who is committing something to memory. And then she went. Steele stood in the living room and looked at the USB drive in his hand. Then he looked at the front window. Then he looked at the door. He thought about Lily's voice saying it could have happened an hour ago. He thought about the court officer with the sealed evidence bag. He thought about Hartwell's people pulling traffic footage the morning after Rachel Cole went through a guardrail. He plugged the drive into his phone adapter. His phone wasn't the right tool for this. He needed a laptop. He needed Gracie. But he needed to know what was on it before he handed it to anyone. Needed to know what Rachel Cole had called her insurance. Needed to understand the weight of what Emma had been carrying in her pocket for 9 days without knowing it. The drive had 3 files: a PDF, a video file, a folder of images. He opened the PDF first. It took 4 seconds to load, and then he was looking at a document that was 23 pages long with a law firm's letterhead at the top. Not Hartwell, a different firm, smaller, out of Bridger County. And it took him 30 seconds of reading to understand that what he was holding was a legal analysis of the Renford Group's acquisition attempts over 3 years, including 2 instances of what the document described as improper inducement of a probate attorney, 1 instance of fraudulent misrepresentation in a property valuation, and a timeline of communications between Sarah Renford Cole and Daniel Renford that demonstrated coordinated action to influence the Cole estate proceedings. Rachel had hired a lawyer, a real one, in a different county, far enough from Hartwell's network to be outside his reach, and that lawyer had put together 23 pages of documented, sourced, legally structured evidence of fraud. Steele's hands were not steady. He opened the image folder. 41 photographs, bank statements, wire transfer records, emails, printed, photographed, some of them handwritten annotations in the margins in a woman's small print. He recognized Sarah Cole's name in a dozen of them, Daniel Renford's name in more, and in 3 of them, a name he recognized from the court motion filed this morning, Judge Teller. He stopped. He looked at the judge's name in the email, read the context around it, read it again. There was a payment, not direct, nothing this careful was ever direct, routed through a consulting firm, listed as a speaking fee for an event that Gracie would probably spend 30 minutes confirming had never occurred. $30,000. Dated 14 months ago. The consulting firm's registered agent was a name Steele didn't recognize, but the firm's address was on Meridian Street, 4 blocks from Hartwell's office. Judge Teller. The judge who had signed the vehicle access order this morning at 7 a.m., before the courthouse was officially open. Steele put his phone in his pocket. He stood in the living room of his trailer on Culvert Road with the USB drive in his hand and understood with complete clarity that what he was holding was not just evidence of fraud. It was evidence that the fix was already in, that the hearing Wednesday wasn't a hearing, it was a performance, that Sarah Cole had spent months or years building a structure so solid and so layered that Rachel Cole had looked at it, and understood she couldn't fight it from inside the system, could only run, and had died running. And the only person who could dismantle it was already compromised. His phone rang. Crow. "I'm 2 minutes out," Crow said. Pettit called. "How bad?" "Bad," Steele said. "Get here." He hung up. He went to the window and looked at the black SUV. Still there, still running. Patient? The way money is patient? The way people are patient when they've already paid for the outcome and are just waiting for delivery. He thought about what they wanted. They wanted the drive, which they'd hoped was in the car, and wasn't. They knew he had Emma. They didn't know Emma had the drive. Maybe. Or maybe they did know. Maybe they'd been watching long enough to consider the possibility. Maybe the two vehicles outside were not here for intimidation, but for something with a purpose he didn't want to name. He went to the back bedroom, knocked twice, his own knock, a specific pattern he'd established with Diane 2 days ago without explaining why, and Diane opened the door. Emma was sitting on the bed with her knees pulled up, the photograph in her hands. She looked at Steele and said, "Are they going to come in?" "No," Steele said. "How do you know?" "Because I'm not going to let them." He looked at her steadily. "Emma, your mom put together evidence on that drive, a lot of it." He paused. "She was very smart and very brave." Emma looked at the photograph. "I know," she said. "She was always the smartest person in every room. She said that was the thing women had to be careful about because it made some people angry." Steele crouched down. "I need to get this drive to someone who can use it. A lawyer who isn't connected to the people outside." "Your daughter," Emma said. "Yes." "Is she smart?" "Smarter than me," Steele said, "by a significant margin." Emma almost smiled. It wasn't quite a smile. It was the shadow of one, the shape of a smile in a face that hadn't had reason for it recently. But it was something. "Okay," she said. "Go." He went back to the living room as Crow's truck came hard around the corner and pulled up across the mouth of his drive, blocking it. Crow got out, and 2 more men got out with him. Big Tommy and a man named Vasquez, quiet and wide-shouldered, who had done 2 tours before he found the remnants and hadn't talked much since. They didn't look around. They positioned themselves the way men position themselves when they've done this before. Tommy at the corner of the house, Vasquez at the side gate, Crow walking straight to Steele's door. Crow came in, looked at Steele, looked at the drive. "That it?" "That's it." Steele held it up. "It's enough. But Teller's on their payroll." Crow went very still. "The judge." "There's a payment routed through a consulting firm. Rachel's lawyer documented it." Steele looked at Crow. "We can't use Teller. We need a different judge." "You can't just swap judges." "Lily can file a recusal motion," Steele said. "If she can document the conflict on a 48-hour timeline before Wednesday's hearing, then she needs to start now." Steele was already dialing. "I need you and Tommy at the front, Vasquez on the alley. Nobody comes to this door." "Steele." Crow caught his arm. His grip was firm, not rough. The grip of a man who needs you to actually hear what he's saying. "If these people are dirty enough to buy a judge, they're dirty enough for worse. You understand what I'm saying?" Steele met his eyes. "I understand." "If this goes sideways, then it goes sideways," Steele said. "But it's not going sideways in here, not with Emma in that room." Crow held his arm for another 2 seconds, then let go, went to the window, looked at the SUV. "They're on a clock too," Crow said, almost to himself. "If they were going to move, they'd have moved." "They want the drive," Steele said. "They think they can still get it legally. The moment they realize they can't, the calculation changes." He looked at Crow. "Which means I need to move faster than their calculation." He called Lily. She picked up in one ring. "What happened?" "Emma had the drive," he said. "In her jacket pocket since Route 9. 9 days." He heard Lily's breath catch. "It's got the Bridger County legal analysis, bank records, wire transfers, and documentation of payments to Judge Teller." Silence on the line. A long silence that had weight. "Teller," Lily said quietly, "signed the vehicle access order this morning at 7, before court hours, because he knew what was in that car, and he needed Hartwell's people to get there first." "Oh God," Lily said. Then, immediately, the professional reflex kicking over the human one. Okay. I need that drive. I need it in my hands in the next 30 minutes so I can start pulling the documents. There are 2 vehicles outside my house, Steele said. Hartwell's people. I can't drive the drive to you without knowing whether they're going to follow. A beat. Can Crow bring it? Steele looked at Crow. Crow had heard enough. He held out his hand. Steele looked at the drive for a moment. The small, ordinary thing that a woman had called her insurance and had died carrying, and then he put it in Crow's palm. Crow's coming to you now, Steele said. Direct route. Tommy follows in his truck. He looked at Crow. If anyone pulls out behind you, call me before you call anyone else. Crow pocketed the drive. He was already moving to the door. He paused with his hand on the frame and looked back at Steele with the expression he used instead of anything warmer. You're going to be all right, Crow said. I know, Steele said. Crow left. Through the window, Steele watched him get in his truck and back out fast and pull north on Culvert Road. The black SUV didn't move. He watched it for 30 seconds. It didn't move. They didn't know. They still thought the drive was in the car, or they thought it was in the trailer and were waiting for instructions. Either way, they held their position, and Crow's truck reached the end of the block and turned and was gone. Steele exhaled. Vasquez's voice came from the side of the house. Not loud, just clear. Second vehicle is stationary. Nobody's moving. Copy, Steele said, loud enough to carry. He stood in the middle of his living room and felt the adrenaline begin to metabolize. That specific coming down that left the body shaky and the mind clearer than it had any right to be. He thought about the next 12 hours, about what Lily needed to file and when, and what judge she'd file it with, if not tell her. About whether Hartwell would make a move tonight or wait for morning. His phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer. Then he did. The voice on the other end was smooth and unhurried and female and entirely self-possessed. Mr. Morrison, Sarah Cole said, I think it's time we spoke directly. Steele stood very still. He said nothing. I understand you've been doing research, she said. I understand your people have been looking into my family's business interests. I want you to know that I don't take that personally. She paused. You're a man who found a child in difficult circumstances, and you've developed an attachment. That's understandable. It's even admirable in its way. What do you want? Steele said. I want Emma to be safe and provided for, she said, which is what I've always wanted. Everything else? A small pause. Everything else is noise. Is Rachel Cole noise? A longer pause. Rachel made choices that put both herself and Emma in difficult positions. I tried for years to help her make better ones. You threatened her, Steele said. You threatened her with Emma to make her withdraw a protective order. You've been trying to seize a land parcel that belongs to her daughter. Those are very serious allegations, Sarah said, and I imagine you believe you have something that supports them. Her voice stayed smooth. Here's what I know, Mr. Morrison. I have a clean record, a stable home, substantial resources, and a blood relationship with Emma. You have a criminal history, a motorcycle club affiliation, and a 48-hour emergency placement that expires before Wednesday's hearing. She paused. Whatever you think you've found, a man with your background presenting evidence against a licensed attorney with charitable board positions is going to face significant credibility problems in a Keller County courtroom. Especially with Teller on the bench, Steele said. Another pause, this one different, shorter but denser. I'm going to offer you something, she said, and her voice had shifted half a degree, some almost imperceptible recalibration. I'm going to offer it once. Walk away from this. Release the emergency placement voluntarily. Whatever you think you have, whatever your people have assembled, let this go. Emma will be provided for. She'll have everything she needs. Except a reason to trust adults, Steele said. Mr. Morrison. She's 6 years old, Steele said. She read her mother's face well enough to know when she was scared. She's been watching adults fail her since before she could articulate what failing looked like. And you want me to hand her to the person her mother was running from? He paused. No. Silence on the line. When Sarah spoke again, the smoothness was still there, but something underneath it had shifted. Something had come into alignment that hadn't been aligned before, like a mechanism clicking into position. "Then I'll see you Wednesday," she said. "And I want you to know, I don't hold any of this against you. You did what you thought was right. That counts for something." She hung up. Steele stood in the quiet trailer and listened to the silence where her voice had been and felt the specific chill of a person who has just told you in the most civilized possible language that they intend to destroy you. His phone buzzed. "Lily, Crow is here. I have the drive. Steele. This is enough. This is more than enough. But I need tonight. Don't let anything happen tonight." He typed back, "Nothing's happening tonight. Work fast." He went to the back bedroom and knocked his knock. Diane opened the door. Emma was still on the bed, still holding the photograph, but she'd fallen asleep sitting up, her head tipped slightly to one side, the picture loose in her hands. Diane had put a blanket over her without waking her. Steele looked at her sleeping. At the photograph still loosely held even in sleep, the body maintaining the last conscious grip on the last thing her mother had touched. "She went out about 10 minutes ago," Diane said, quiet. "Went fast. Like she'd been running on empty and just stopped." Steele nodded. He pulled the bedroom door most of the way closed and went to the kitchen and stood at the counter and didn't make coffee. Just stood there in the particular stillness of a house where a child is sleeping, and outside there are two vehicles full of men with instructions. And somewhere across Millhaven, a woman with a smooth voice was making other calls. Vasquez materialized at the kitchen window. Just his face, briefly, checking in, and Steele nodded at him, and Vasquez disappeared. Big Tommy texted, "SUV hasn't moved. Second vehicle pulled out 10 minutes ago. Just the one now." Steele texted back, "Keep watching." He sat down at the kitchen table. He looked at his hands, the knuckles, the ink, the history. The specific hands of a man who had solved most of his problems with them and was now in the middle of a problem that required something entirely different. Required patience and precision and trusting other people to carry weight he couldn't carry alone, which was the hardest thing Steele Morrison had ever been asked to do and kept being asked to do and was slowly, badly, imperfectly learning. At 11:47 p.m., Lily called. "I've got it structured," she said. She sounded like someone who had been running at full output for 6 hours and wasn't going to stop. "The recusal motion on Teller. I'm filing it tonight. Emergency basis, citing the documentary evidence of financial conflict. I'm going to Judge Abrams. She's clean, she's experienced, and she's handled cases against Hartwell before and didn't blink." She paused. "The fraud documentation from Bridger County is solid. The payment records are traceable. The emails are time-stamped, and the metadata is intact." Another pause. "Steele, Rachel's lawyer did exceptional work. She built something airtight. Will it hold in court?" "It'll hold if we get Abrams," Lily said. "If Teller somehow stays on the case." "Get Abrams," Steele said. "I'm filing in 40 minutes," she said. "I need you to do one thing." "What?" "Wednesday morning," she said. "Before the hearing, Emma needs to be willing to speak. Not testimony, she's 6, we can't put her on the stand, but an interview with a guardian ad litem, a court-appointed advocate. If Emma can tell the ad litem what she told you, about her mother's voice changing, about the phone call the night before the accident." She stopped. "It won't be easy for her." Steele looked at the closed bedroom door, at the thin line of dark underneath it. "She told me she trusted me on Route 9, he said. "I know," Lily said quietly. "I'm asking you to make sure that trust is warranted." He didn't answer right away. He sat with the weight of what his daughter had just said, not as a paralegal, but as his daughter. The specific weight of a child extending a conditional, limited, careful form of trust to a father who had not earned it and was still trying to understand what earning it meant. "It is," he said. "I'll make sure she's ready." He heard Lily exhale. Then, "Get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be—" The front window exploded inward. Not a bullet, a brick, thrown hard, and it hit the kitchen counter and bounced, and the sound of the glass coming in was enormous in the quiet of the trailer, and Steele was on his feet in one motion, phone dropped, body moving before the mind caught up with what the body already knew. Tommy's voice outside, loud now, no longer careful. "They're moving. Both doors, SUV, 2 men. Steele. He was already at the front door. He hit it with his shoulder and came out onto the small porch, and the cold air hit him, and he saw them. Two men, the SUV's doors open behind them, moving fast toward the trailer in the specific, purposeful way of men who have been given instructions and have stopped caring about subtlety. "Stop," Steele said. His voice came out at a register he hadn't used in years. Not loud, the opposite of loud. The specific register of a large and dangerous man who has decided that the next thing that happens is going to be entirely his choice. The two men stopped. Tommy had come around the corner and was behind them now, and Vasquez had come through the side gate, and the geometry of it was suddenly very clear to everyone. The two men from the SUV standing in Steele's gravel drive with a biker in front of them and two more flanking. The nearer man was late 30s, thick through the shoulders, with the flat eyes of someone hired for capacity rather than judgment. He looked at Steele. He looked at Tommy. He looked at Vasquez. He did the math. "We just want to talk," he said. "You threw a brick through my window," Steele said. "There's a child sleeping in this house." The man's jaw moved. "We have authorization." "You have nothing," Steele said. "You have a signed order from a judge whose name appears on a wire transfer that's going to be in front of a federal conflict of interest review within 72 hours. You have a client who just called me and told me to walk away, which means she's scared, which means she knows what we have." He looked at the man steadily. "You're standing in my driveway at midnight with a brick and a judge who's about to be the subject of a judicial conduct investigation. I want you to think very carefully about what authorization covers that." Silence in the gravel drive, cold air, exhaust from the SUV, the distant sound of Millhaven at midnight, a train somewhere, a dog, the ordinary sounds of a city that didn't know any of this was happening. The nearer man looked at his partner. Something passed between them, the math being rerun. He took a step back. "This isn't over," he said. "I know," Steele said. "Wednesday. Bring whatever you've got. We'll be there." They got back in the SUV. The engine revved. The vehicle backed out of the drive and turned north, and its headlights swept the trailer front, and then it was gone. Steele stood on the porch in the cold. Tommy and Vasquez came to stand near him without anyone asking them to. Not flanking now, just present, the way men stand near each other after something that required standing together. Nobody said anything for a moment. Then Tommy said, "You want me to board up the window?" "Yeah," Steele said. "There's plywood in the garage." Tommy went. Vasquez lit a cigarette and leaned against the porch rail and looked at the empty street where the SUV had been. "Wednesday," Vasquez said. Not a question. "Wednesday," Steele said. He went back inside. He swept the glass off the kitchen counter with his forearm. Not carefully, just moved it. He went to the back bedroom and knocked, and Diane opened the door, and Emma was awake now, sitting up, the blanket around her shoulders. "I heard something break," Emma said. "The window," Steele said. "It's being fixed. You're okay." Emma looked at him for a long time. "They came," she said. "They left," Steele said. She thought about this. "Because of you." "Because of us," he said. He looked at her steadily. "Emma, Wednesday, there's going to be a hearing. A person is going to want to ask you some questions. Not about your mom, not about the accident, about your aunt, about what you know, about what you've seen." He paused. "You don't have to do it. Nobody can make you. But if you're willing—" "She hurt my mom," Emma said. "Didn't she?" Steele looked at the photograph in her hands, at the woman laughing in the sunlight. "We're going to let a judge decide that," he said. "But what you know matters. What you saw and heard matters." Emma looked at the photograph for a long time. Then she looked up. "My mom told me the truth was the safest thing you could carry," she said. She said lies were heavy, but the truth was light. She pressed the photograph against her chest. "I want to carry something light." Steele sat on the edge of the bed. He didn't put his arm around her. He was still learning when to and when not to, but he sat close enough that she could feel that he was there. Outside, Tommy was nailing plywood over the broken window. The sound of the hammer was regular and solid and workmanlike in the cold night air, The sound of something being repaired. And in the morning, Lily would be filing a motion in front of Judge Abrams. And Wednesday, the truth that Rachel Cole had assembled and carried and died carrying would finally have a room to be spoken in. But that was Wednesday. Tonight, Steele Morrison sat on the edge of a bed in a cold trailer in Millhaven and kept watch over a sleeping child in her photograph. And outside, his brothers stood in the dark, and somewhere across the city, Sarah Cole was on her phone again, running her contingencies, tightening the machine she'd built, getting ready for Wednesday's performance. She didn't know the stage had changed. She didn't know Judge Teller was removed from the case at 6:14 Wednesday morning. Lily had filed the recusal motion at 12:53 a.m., attaching 17 pages of documentary evidence including the wire transfer records, the consulting firm's registration, and a forensic accounting summary that Gracie had assembled in 4 hours of work that should have taken 4 days. Judge Abrams reviewed it at 5:30 a.m. By 6:14, she had signed the recusal order and assigned herself to the case, and by 6:45, her clerk had called Hartwell's office with the news. Steele was already dressed when Lily texted him. He'd been awake since 4. He'd made coffee and sat at the kitchen table and watched the light change through the plywood-boarded window and thought about nothing specific, just let the morning come. Emma woke at 7. She came to the kitchen in her yellow raincoat, which she'd taken to sleeping in the way children claim totemic objects in uncertain times, and she sat across from Steele and ate cereal with the focused quiet of someone preparing for something. "Today's the day," she said. "Today's the day," Steele said. She looked at her cereal. "I'm not scared." "You don't have to not be scared," Steele said. "You just have to tell the truth. Those are different things." Emma considered this with the seriousness she brought to everything. "Okay," she said. "Both then." The courthouse was a gray stone building on Millhaven's west side that smelled like old carpet and institutional coffee and the specific anxiety of people who needed something from a system that wasn't designed around their needs. Steele walked in with Emma beside him and Lily one step ahead, her briefcase in one hand and her game face on. The particular composed expression she'd been building since law school, the one that said she had already considered every move in this room and was ready for all of them. Crow was in the hallway outside courtroom 4. So was Big Tommy, in a collared shirt that looked like it was making him deeply uncomfortable, and Vasquez, and Gracie, who Steele had never actually met in person and who turned out to be a compact woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and an expression of permanent mild assessment that reminded him, absurdly, of Delgado. Emma looked at all of them, at these large, weathered, quietly dangerous people standing in the courthouse hallway in their best versions of ordinary clothes, there for her. She didn't say anything. She reached out and took Steele's hand. Sarah Cole arrived at 8:45 with Marcus Hartwell and 2 associates. Hartwell was exactly what his reputation suggested. 60s, silver-haired, with the bearing of a man who had won enough times that winning had stopped feeling like an event and become simply the expected condition of his existence. He looked at Lily. He looked at Steele. Something moved behind his eyes that wasn't quite recognition and wasn't quite concern. Just a recalibration, the brief adjustment of a machine encountering unexpected friction. Sarah Cole looked at Emma. Emma looked back at her aunt with those dark, ancient eyes. And she didn't look away, and she didn't squeeze Steele's hand harder. She just looked at Sarah Cole the way she looked at everything, reading, measuring, deciding. And then she turned her face forward toward the courtroom door. Steele watched Sarah Cole watch Emma do that. He watched something move across Sarah Cole's composed face, something small and fast and almost human. And then it was gone, and the composure was back, and she was looking at Hartwell and saying something low that Steele couldn't hear. The guardian ad litem was a woman named Dr. Patricia Osei, court-appointed, independent, with 20 years of child advocacy work and a manner so grounded and unperformative that Emma had relaxed visibly within the first 3 minutes of their pre-hearing interview. Steele had sat outside the interview room and listened to the muffled sound of his own heartbeat while Emma talked, and when Emma came out, her face was quiet and clean in a way that it hadn't been since Route 9, the specific cleanliness of having set something down. "She asked me about my mom's voice," Emma said to Steele in the hallway. "I told her." "Good," Steele said. "I told her about the phone call, too." the night before. Emma looked at her photograph, which she'd carried in. I told her my mom sounded like she'd decided something. She looked up. Dr. Osi said that was important. It is, Steele said. Then I told her my mom was the smartest person in every room, Emma said. She said that was important too. Inside courtroom 4, Judge Abrams was a small woman in her 60s with silver-streaked hair and reading glasses, and the manner of someone who had long since stopped being impressed by any performance that wasn't backed by substance. She read the motions before her with the unhurried attention of a person who understood that speed and thoroughness were not the same thing and had chosen thoroughness every time. Hartwell presented Sarah Cole's case first. He was polished and precise and structured his argument the way expensive attorneys structure arguments, like architecture. Every piece load-bearing, nothing decorative. He spoke about stability and resources and blood relationship and appropriate placement. He spoke about the iron remnants in Steele's record and the photographs from Riker's shop and the PI's affidavit. He said the word concerning 14 times. Steele counted. Then Lily stood up. She was 31 years old, and she was the daughter of a man who had failed her in most of the ways that mattered, and she stood in front of Judge Abrams and laid out Rachel Cole's evidence the way her mother used to lay out the pieces of a broken thing before fixing it, methodically, completely, with total confidence that the pieces were all there. The wire transfers, the consulting firm, the Renford Group's acquisition history, the protective order, and the 17-page letter from Hartwell's own firm that had preceded its withdrawal. The Bridger County legal analysis, and the traffic camera footage from Route 9, which Lily had subpoenaed directly from the county system that morning, footage that showed a second vehicle, a dark sedan registered to a subsidiary of Meridian Consulting, following Rachel Cole's car north on Route 9 at 11:47 p.m. on the night of the accident, maintaining consistent distance for 3 miles before the bend where the guardrail was. The courtroom was very quiet when Lily showed the footage timestamp. Judge Abrams looked at it for a long time. Then she looked at Hartwell. Hartwell's architecture was still standing, but something in its foundation had shifted. You could see it in the way he held his pen, the slight excess of pressure, the controlled stillness of a man who has encountered the unexpected and is deciding how to categorize it. Sarah Cole was looking at the screen showing the footage. Her face was composed. Her hands, folded on the table in front of her, were composed. But her left thumb was pressing into her right palm with a force that was leaving a mark, and Steele, sitting in the gallery, could see it from 15 feet away. Dr. Osei presented her report. She spoke for 11 minutes. She used the word attachment 4 times, the word stability 6 times, and the phrase demonstrated protective relationship 3 times. She said that in her professional assessment, the child Emma Cole had formed a significant and healthy bond with the current emergency placement, and that disruption of this bond without compelling cause would constitute a measurable harm to the child's recovery from acute trauma. She said that Emma had asked her, at the end of their interview, whether the truth was enough, and that she had told Emma yes. Judge Abrams called a 90-minute recess. In the hallway, Steele stood with his back against the wall, and Lily stood beside him, and neither of them said anything for a while. Crow brought coffee from the machine down the corridor, bad coffee, the kind that tastes like it was brewed in a different decade, and handed cups to Steele and Lily and took one for himself and stood with them in the particular silence of people who have done everything they can do and are now in the territory of waiting. Emma was with Gracie and Diane at the far end of the hallway, drawing on a notepad that Gracie had produced from somewhere. She was drawing something that from this distance looked like a circle of large animals. "She's going to be okay," Lily said, quietly. Not to Steele, not to Crow, just set it into the air. "Yeah," Steele said. Lily turned her coffee cup in her hands. She didn't look at him. "You did a good thing," she said, "on Route 9. Stopping." Steele looked at his daughter's profile, at the careful, composed 31-year-old face that had his eyes and her mother's everything else, and the particular set of a jaw that had learned to hold things without showing it because that was what his house had taught her. "I know I can't," he started. "Don't," Lily said. "Not hard, just clear." He stopped. She turned and looked at him. Those eyes. His eyes in her face. "Wednesday first," she said. "Then we figure out the rest. Okay?" "Okay," he said. She looked at him for another moment. Something in her face moved. Something that wasn't forgiveness and wasn't its absence. Something that existed in the complicated geography between those two things where real people actually live. Then she looked back at the courtroom door. "Abrams is going to rule for you," she said. "The footage changes the character of everything. Hartwell knows it. Watch him when we go back in." She was right. When they returned to courtroom 4 and Judge Abrams took her seat and the room settled, Steele watched Hartwell. The architecture was still there, but it was holding something different now. Not confidence, something closer to controlled retreat, the posture of a man who had already begun calculating the least damaging exit. Judge Abrams ruled in 40 minutes. She denied the petition for immediate custody transfer. She cited the documented evidence of financial conflict motivating the custody claim, the coercive circumstances surrounding the protective order withdrawal, and the guardian ad litem's assessment of Emma's established bond with the current placement. She ordered an expanded investigation into the Renford Group's acquisition activities and the circumstances of Rachel Cole's accident. She granted Steele Morrison extended emergency placement pending a full custody hearing, and she appointed a separate investigator from the state attorney's office to review the judicial conduct questions surrounding the recusal. She looked at Sarah Cole when she finished, and she said, "The court takes seriously any attempt to use a child's welfare as an instrument of financial interest. This matter is not closed." Sarah Cole looked at the table in front of her. Her composure held, but it held the way things hold when the thing supporting them has already given way underneath. The surface still intact, the foundation already gone. Hartwell was speaking quietly in her ear. She was nodding. Her left thumb was still pressing into her right palm. In the gallery, Emma sat beside Diane and held her photograph and didn't look at her aunt at all. Outside the courthouse, the November air had gone cleaner overnight. The clouds pulled back to show a sky the color of cold water, and the men of the Iron Remnants were standing on the courthouse steps in the particular loose formation of people who don't need to be told what to do because they've already done it. Emma came down the steps beside Steele and stopped at the bottom and looked at all of them. At Crow, with his wool cap and his coffee. At Big Tommy, who was already loosening his collar with relief. At Vasquez, who was lighting a cigarette with the unhurried precision of a man returning to normal after a period of sustained alertness. At Gracie, who was already on her phone, already moving. Emma looked at all of them, and then she looked at Steele. "They came," she said. "For me." "Yeah," Steele said. She looked back at the men on the steps. "Why?" Steele thought about it. "Because that's what this family does," he said. Emma was quiet for a moment. Then she reached into the pocket of her yellow raincoat and took out the photograph and looked at it. Her mother in the sunlight, laughing at something outside the frame, the blood-stained corner that Emma had kept her thumb over for 9 days. She looked at it for a long time. Then she put it back in her pocket, carefully, and took Steele's hand. They went to the diner on Fletcher, all of them, the whole improbable assembly of them. And they took up 3 booths, and the waitress looked at them with the specific expression of a woman who has seen everything Millhaven has to offer and has decided to find it endearing, and she brought coffee and menus and extra napkins without being asked. Emma sat between Steele and Lily, which was not planned and was not arranged, and which Steele noticed without commenting on because some things are better acknowledged in silence than named aloud. Lily ordered pancakes. Emma ordered the same thing, pointing at Lily's order with the particular decision-making of a child who has found a reference point she trusts. Steele ordered eggs because it was what he knew how to make, and ordering it felt like continuity. The coffee came. The diner smelled like butter and old wood and the specific warmth of a room that has been fed in for decades. And outside through the windows, the sky was that clean, cold blue. And the Harleys were parked in a line on Fletcher Street, and somewhere in the state attorney's office, a case file was being opened with Sarah Cole's name on it, and the land parcel on the north edge of Millhaven was exactly where it had always been, undeveloped and patient, waiting to grow into whatever Emma Cole decided it should be when she was old enough to decide. Crow raised his coffee cup. He didn't make a speech. Crow never made speeches. He just raised it and looked at Steele across the table, and Steele raised his, and that was the whole of it. Big Tommy said, "So, who's fixing the window?" "I'll fix the window," Riker said. "You're going to charge him," Tommy said. I'm going to charge him fair, Riker said. Emma looked up from her hot chocolate. What window? Nothing, everyone said at approximately the same time, and Emma looked at each of them in turn with those ancient reading eyes, and then decided, apparently, that this was one of those adult things that didn't require her full attention, and she went back to her hot chocolate. Steele looked at his daughter sitting beside this child. Lily was explaining something on a napkin with a pen, some drawing that Emma had requested, and Lily's handwriting was precise and clear, the way everything about her was precise and clear, and Emma was watching with total focus. And the two of them in that booth at that moment were more than Steele had any right to, and he knew it. He picked up his coffee. He drank it. It was bad coffee, the diner kind, the kind that has been sitting since before the customers arrived, but it was hot and real, and he was here to drink it. Outside, the bikes sat in a row on Fletcher Street. The engines were cold and quiet. The road was wet and empty, and the sky above Millhaven was the specific clean blue of a morning after a storm that has passed entirely, leaving the air different, leaving the world slightly rearranged. Steele Morrison looked at his hands around the coffee cup. The knuckles, the ink, the scars, the evidence. The hands of a man who had made most of his decisions wrong and had stopped on a highway in the rain and made one right. He thought about Route 9, about the sound that had cut through the storm, that thin and hollow sound that a man tries to outrun and can't. About a child in a ditch in a yellow raincoat who hadn't run from him, who had looked at him with those eyes and said, "You have a lot of tattoos," and held his hand and said, "Don't cry, look at me," and meant it, and been right. He thought about his daughter's handwriting on a diner napkin. He set the coffee cup down. Emma looked at him from across the table. She read his face the way she always read his face. 3 seconds, complete, nothing missed. Then she smiled. Not the shadow of a smile, not the shape of one. The real thing, full and sudden and 6 years old. The smile of a child who has been carrying winter for a long time and has just, in this specific moment, in this specific diner, with these specific people around her, decided to set it down. Steele looked at it. He didn't look away.